through some very practical use cases today around performance. And if you're a producer on this, and I know we saw in the comments there that there's a lot of team members here where every day you're out there selling, just like Brett and I. And I have some key takeaways for you, and I highly recommend to take notes. It's something I've learned in my previous career, that it's not even that you're going to go back and review the notes. It's the retention that you get from actually writing it down. But if there's any questions anyone has afterwards, we're going to give everyone a place to get a hold of us. And so, certainly feel free to reach out after the webinar to either Brett or myself, and we'll show you a way to get in touch, with both of us at the same time at the end of this webinar. If you're a manager, if you're an owner, this is going to be a action-packed webinar. It's not going to be 2 hours long. It should be pretty brief, but I want you to be able to walk away with some action steps for your team. Okay. And if you're a producer on the call, looking at some of these action steps and thinking about it from a management standpoint, right? I want you to think about, how can you make the life of your owner easier? How can you make the life of your managers easier? Like, the most valuable salesperson or salespeople that we've ever met are people that are self-sustaining, self-driven, that are able to pick themselves up by the bootstraps and take initiative and push hard and produce consistently. So, you're always going to have a job and always going to make great money if you can show up every day and take initiative. So just the pure fact that you're on this webinar today says a lot about any producers that are here with us. So without further ado, we can kind of jump in. So some of this information is coming from my career experience. A lot of this information is coming from the experience of Brett and Team Hired and the company's experience as a whole. And also in my previous career, had an opportunity to work for a international sales trainer, Grant Cardone, for about 3 years. Some of the material I've learned from Grant and his team. So it's sort of a hodgepodge of a bunch of different information around performance. And, at Team Hired, what we do as a company is we work directly with insurance agencies to help them go out and staff and recruit and fill sales and service positions with driven, motivated individuals who are looking for that opportunity inside the insurance agency. Our ownership are both mega agents within Allstate, both started scratch, grew their agencies to about 25 million, had teams of 45 to 50 people at any given time. And what they've built out here at Team Hired is pretty special. We've got almost 30 full-time team members working nationwide. We work with Allstate, State Farm, Farmers, independent agencies, you name it. And we do it in almost all 50 states at a pretty high volume. So I'm going to touch on hiring briefly today, give just a brief introduction once we get a little deeper to what we do. But again, it's not going to be really a sales pitch. And actually, it fits in very nicely with the content we're going through. But if anybody does have a hiring need, if you're a manager, if you're an owner, if you're a producer and your owner or manager is not with you and you know that they've been trying to hire people in this current job market, please reach out. And Brett, at the end of this, we'll go through some of the deals and things that we'd offer out to this group. But I like to break things down real simple. So if you're taking notes right now,
Andy, we're still seeing the first slide, I think.
Oh, you're still seeing the first slide? Let me stop.
Yeah.
How about now?
Just waiting for it to come through.
Okay.
There we go.
Better. If I scroll, does it scroll?
I'm not seeing any scrolling. No.
No scrolling. Okay. Let me try something else. How about now? Are we good now?
It's populating.
I am the where we started page right now.
Yeah, this is the first slide, Andy.
And then you see blue. I think, okay. So we're just getting some feedback. People can see when we scroll. So
Okay.
Brad, it's just you.
Just
You're
me.
in the twilight
Okay.
zone.
Just wanted to make sure.
Yep. Awesome. So I guess just diving right in, I'm going to skip past the Team Hired stuff and our processes and all that right now. And I want to touch on an equation here. And this equation is an equation for success. Some of this is from a management perspective. Some of it is from a producer perspective. But here's the key elements we're going to cover today. Accountability. If you can't hold yourself accountable and you can't hold your team members accountable, right? It's not going to lead to a good predictable outcome or predictable growth. So if you're having performance issues right now, the first place I would go into is I would look at accountability. Okay. The next thing we're going to cover is going to be performance. And when I talk about performance, I'm talking about everything from number of phone calls and activity level to your close ratios to your retention ratios, right? So actual performance. And also going to talk about retention. So managers on the call, owners on the call, have some really, really good material on retention. And we've helped hire for several thousand agencies. We see some common themes as to what agencies that retain people at a very high level are all doing versus agencies that experience, a lot of turnover, what they maybe could just correct and tweak a little bit to boost their retention. So when you look at it, if you can, have a team that's highly accountable to themselves and to each other, have consistent performance from all your team members, and retain individuals on a long-term basis, that's where you have predictable growth as an agency. And as an individual, that's where you have predictable growth. And you don't have to look just at sales, right? You can go look at sports. Take Michael Jordan, right? High levels of self-accountability, high levels of performance, very calculated performance from the gym time to the time on the court to the execution during the game. And then sticking through it, even when, you would lose a championship or he would lose different games, like coming back day after day, and has a big enough incentive and reason to push through the tough moments. So if you're feeling like, man, the last week, couple weeks, the last month, I just haven't been hitting my numbers, I'm in a bit of a slump, one thing's for sure, if you don't change anything, nothing will change. So today's about making some changes, and hopefully turning that around or just going to the next level. So without further ado, let's dive right into accountability. I've got two things to cover on this. So this is a formula I learned from a leadership coach by the name of Dave Anderson. If you guys go Google him, he's actually from the automotive industry. And what he does is he goes into large dealership groups. These are 200 million, 500 million, $1 billion automotive groups, and works with their management teams on accountability. And I love how simple this is. He basically said, hey, here's the formula for accountability. Accountability is expectations plus consequences. And so if you look down here on the blue line here, I got a little bit of a typo. That should be a plus sign, but expectations plus consequences equals accountability. So if we think about that, the easiest analogy I can break that down to is going to be a kid. Okay. I've got a kiddo. It's about four years old. And if I see something that he does that I don't think is okay, and I administer a consequence, right? But I never set the expectation. So he goes in the fridge at 7 a.m. and tries to get a Reese's out for breakfast. And I start yelling, and it's like, time out, buddy, right? But I never told him he couldn't get a Reese's at 7 a.m. I mean, it seems logical, right? But for him, he's like, that sounds like a great idea. That's just going to lead to confusion, right? He's like, why am I in timeout right now? I never knew I wasn't supposed to do that. And, think about it for yourselves. For producers on this phone call, you don't need a manager or owner to set an expectation, right? But if you punish yourself and you're beating down on yourself because you're not performing or you're not hitting a metric, but you never sat down and wrote out, what is my self expectation? What do I expect of myself today? How many phone calls do I expect? How much training do I expect to do? How many customers do I intend on following up? And all you do ever is just get down on yourself. I'm not performing. I'm not hitting my numbers. You're literally disciplining yourself and bringing yourself emotional consequence without ever sitting down and saying, what is the expectation? How do I make a game plan around this? And then you're confused. I've done this for many weeks and many months in my career where I'll sit there in confusion. Why am I not performing right now? And I beat down on myself. And it's because I never set a clear target or expectation. On the flip side of this coin, what happens if you set expectations for yourself or for your team and there's no consequences? Well, there's one underlying consequence, which is you don't get paid. I think we all know that one. But I'm talking about at a high level. What happens if the expectation is that I'm going to make 100 phone calls today, or I want each one of my team members to make 100 phone calls, and it doesn't happen? Well, if there's no consequence, it's like, well, I'll just do that tomorrow and I'll do that the next day. And there's no, until it's dire, right? Until I can't make my rent payment or until I can't pay the utility bill at the agency. Like, if it's just based on the final consequence, you never want to get to that place where performance is so low that you're actually considering pulling the plug on the whole thing as a producer or as an agency. So, expectations without consequence just leads to chaos. And same thing with a kid, right? I expect you not to eat Reese's out of the fridge at 7 a.m. for breakfast, but he does it and nothing is said. There's no timeout. There's no talk. We don't sit down on the bed and say, why should we not be doing that for breakfast? And it's like, well, it's probably going to happen again and again and again until he, goes crazy in the morning because he's got a sugar rush every day or whatever. There are underlying consequences that will eventually catch up to you. But it's so much easier if you just say, hey, I'm going to create my own equation here. Here's what I expect of my team, or here's what I expect of myself, plus consequences. If I or my team don't hit these, numbers, metrics, requirements, there's going to be consequences that come into play. And it's going to be sort of a progressive sort of a process here where we're not going directly from, not performing, not hitting expectations to out of business or no commission check, but we're sort of keeping ourselves in line by saying, hey, if I'm not hitting the expectations I've set for myself or my team, we're going to take sort of a tiered approach here. And the consequences are going to get steadily more severe so that we can actually get back on path here and correct this. And that was Dave Anderson's formula for accountability, which I thought was a real simple way to look at it. And we talk to a lot of agencies that do struggle with accountability. And we talk to a lot of producers that also have a tough time holding themselves accountable. And I would just challenge anybody on this phone call that thinks they have an accountability problem in the business to sit back down and say, what are the expectations that we have as a team? What are the consequences if we're not hitting those expectations? And if you can actually execute on those two things, you will have, either revamped or installed accountability inside your business, as long as you're actually willing to follow through with the expectations and follow through with the and the consequences, right? Like there's no reason to just write this stuff down, never actually put it into action, because then it's not real. It's just a made up accountability chart. So to help out with this, I'm going to share something out that, I've personally been under as a producer at a previous business, and it's something you can use. And this is a accountability agreement. Now, something really cool about this, some of you on here don't own an agency, you don't manage an agency. You woke up today as a sales producer like Brett and I, and you're thinking, well, maybe my team doesn't have this. Well, I'd suggest either approaching management or ownership and saying, hey, can we get some clarity here and maybe put together an accountability agreement? Or you can do it with yourself. I've seen independent sales contractors come up with their own agreement to say, here's what I expect of myself every day. And if I don't hit it, I'm going to, actually have consequences for myself. Like, just like that athletic analogy, right? You look at Michael Jordan, I guarantee you, if that man lost a game, he was back working twice as hard to correct those issues and turn that ship around and hold himself accountable by giving himself consequence, by improving, by getting back in the gym, by double reviewing the play tapes, by getting with his coach and working through that. And so you don't have to be on a team that has this as a company. Now, if you can do this as an entire company, I highly recommend it. So managers and owners, here's an example, right? Here are the expectations on activity, on service, on attendance, on dress and business attire. And here's the strike system. If any one of these expectations is not met, this strike system is going to be used to help guide back onto a successful path to hit these goals. So what I recommend is if you can put something in place like this immediately, right? And make it transparent. Team meeting, everybody get together. Hey, everyone, we all have big goals, right? We still all want to make a lot of money, right? Okay, good. We know the successful actions that can help everybody here reach a lot of success. Activity levels, right? We're all on the same page with how we service our clients. We're all showing up on time and sticking through the day. We're all dressing the part and getting, into a place of success here. If we're all doing these things as a company, we're going to thrive. We're going to make a lot of money. You on the team, you're going to make a lot of money. And if you're not, right, it's just going to be a non-negotiable expectation that if you get a strike on any of these, I'm not going to yell at you. That doesn't help anybody. We're going to sit down, and our first strike here is literally going to be, hey, there's a problem here, but let's sit down and let's discuss how to fix it. What's going on, right? So on this next page, I'm going to kind of go through what you can personally do as an individual or with your team to work through that process of correction, because sometimes we don't know, right? Sometimes we don't hit a metric, and as a producer, our manager comes down, they say, hey, you know, you need to fix things. And we're sitting there scratching our heads going, I went in with the right intent, right? I went in full faith that I was going to do the right thing today or this week or this month, and it didn't happen. And I don't even know why. And so what I want to walk everyone through is, how do you use the strike system in a progressive way that's not yelling, it's not fighting. It's more like a manager, an owner, a team member coming together to say, hey, we all want the same outcome here. How do we correct this? And so just kind of getting into that, what I recommend is, if you're having a difficult time with performance, we need to pinpoint why. And this is something I learned at Grant's office. And it's something that, you know, I went through a couple of these sessions myself. They were really valuable. And it's a one-on-one review. And this is not a performance review. This is a, hey, me as a team member or my team member didn't hit the expectation. Now we're kind of entering into that strike zone where we got to go back and we got to figure out how to correct this. And a really simple way that they defined that made sense to me was these 3 A's: attitude, activity, and approach. It's like beamed into my brain. If you've ever heard that before too, I'd love to see in the chat. I've got the chat pulled up on the side here. If you've ever heard that attitude, activity, approach before, I'd love to see if that's something that you're already aware of. But if you're not, the idea is this: that if you're lacking in performance, it's going to come down to only one of 3 reasons. Either A, your attitude is horrible, or it's bad, or it's subpar, right? You don't have a good attitude. And I would argue this is the most important. I'm not going to have good activity levels. I'm not going to have a good approach if I have a poor attitude. So the first thing is making sure that you're walking through the doors with a good attitude. The second piece is activity. I can have the greatest attitude in the world, but if I'm not willing to pick up the phone, answer phone calls, get in my emails, send text messages, go on social media, and do the activities that lead to sales, then I got a major problem, because I'm a Ferrari that's sitting in the garage without gas, and I'm not on the track winning the race. So, you could have the highest skilled salesperson in the world, and if they're not hitting their activity levels, they're just leaving money on the table, right? Again, it's like that race car sitting in the garage. Like, get on the track, drive the car, pick up the phone. We used to joke that the phone is like an ATM machine. Like, we'd make little pieces of paper that looked like a mini ATM machine, stick it on top of the phone. When anybody walked away from their desk, they'd walk back, say, "What's this?" "That's your ATM machine. You shut it off. You've been away from your desk for 40 minutes. What are you doing? That thing prints money," right? But it was kind of a funny way to remind people in a good spirit that, hey, without activity, you're not going to get anything you want in this sales game. The last is approach. So I can have the best attitude in the world. I can have very high levels of activity. But if the strategy that I'm using is not working, right, it doesn't matter. Now, for those of you who are relatively new to sales, or maybe you're a year in, a month in, 2 years in, and you're feeling like, I'm trying to get a handle on this whole sales thing, and maybe your approach isn't the best. The best remedy to improving your approach and your strategy is actually activity. That's something that I've learned in my career. I hope that some of the more experienced salespeople on here can kind of echo that, because, if you're not making the calls, you don't get yourself into the real life situations that are going to make you better. You can read 500 scripts. You absolutely need to role play. You need to be reviewing your calls. You need to be training on different scenarios. But until you have a potential customer, or you're listening to your team's phone calls, until you get to a point of being hung up on 100 times and people giving you rejection and having real world experience, not just on an objection, but how was the objection said? How did I feel on that phone call? Being able to listen back to your phone calls, right? Until you actually get on the field and play a few games, there's no amount of training you can do behind the scenes that's going to prepare you to reach a really high level of approach and a good performance level. So, with all 3 of these, they kind of work in tandem. I got to come in with that great attitude, and I got to come in and have high activity levels. Without that, I'm not going to get the experience, and I'm not going to get, enough conversations going to actually close deals and quote business. And then I got to make sure that I'm consistently improving on approach. And something I like to think with is something else I learned at Grant's office. And that is that a professional is somebody who consistently works on their craft on an ongoing basis. It is never ending. On the flip side of that, an amateur is somebody who says, I'm good enough, right? I'm complacent, I'm good. An amateur never actually puts in the work to get to that next level. And you can go from a professional to an amateur. We've seen it with athletes, we've seen it with musicians, where all of a sudden they stop putting in the effort and they drop off the face of the earth. So, with all of these, yeah, they require effort. They require effort, but I think we can all look at the industry as a whole. We can look at the opportunity to make money, to make connections, to have an impact on the community, to give back. There's so many benefits from this, and insurance as a whole in a post-pandemic world is a really good place to be if you're willing to put in the work. So, it's no longer good enough just to show up and put in the work. These days, you've got to be very calculated to be successful in the business. So if you're a salesperson on this phone call, I would write these 3 down and do a self-check. After this phone call, sit down and rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 on all 3 of these. And if anything is less than a 9 or 10, put together an action plan, seek out training, reach out to us, reach out to anybody, right? Reach out to a national sales trainer. There's so many resources. Go to a Facebook group. Say, hey, my team or myself, I've been struggling to get the activity out, had a lot of service calls I need to handle. What are some strategies to increase my activity level? But I will say this before moving on. If everyone looks on the right side, it says Activity Challenge Day. So this was one of my favorite days in my whole career. And I've been selling for about 10 years now. And, when I did this, I was at an office where, you were expected to make between 100 and 200 phone calls per day, ice cold calls to business owners. And we were having some activity challenges. People were not hitting their numbers. You had people making 10 phone calls, 47 phone calls. You'd have that one, new person doing 150 phone calls. But as an office, the activity level was very low. So I see that as one of the biggest challenges out of these 3, right? Training, scripts, reviewing calls, getting people's attitude on track. Okay. But activity is something that I've seen a lot of business owners and a lot of individuals really struggle with hitting on a consistent basis. And so what we did is a 1-day challenge. Whoever can make the most phone calls that were real, right? We're not dialing and hanging up. Talking a call with the intent to quote somebody, right? Or sell somebody. And if they have a voicemail, I leave a voicemail. If they pick up the phone and I give it my best effort and they hang up on me, it happens, right? If I call somebody and we end up engaging and I quote them, great. But these are real phone calls. And the challenge is, whoever can make the most calls in that day, real phone calls, wins an amazing prize. Like what we did was, I think, $500 gift card to a local steakhouse. It was like everybody wanted that. And so, this is something you could do for yourself. You could do this with your team. But what you want to do is really have a competition amongst your peers to see who can crank out the most activity. So what this did for me, aside from the gift card, which I didn't end up winning, I came in like 2nd place, but I ended up cranking out about 8.5 hours of talk time in one single day. I don't think I went to the bathroom once. Had like a banana and Gatorade at my desk. And I just sat there from early in the morning all the way into the evening. I started calling the West Coast and I had this crazy day of activity. And I sat back and said, oh my gosh, I've been coming in every day making, 40, 50 phone calls, complaining about there's not enough hours in the day. And when I put my intention on a high activity level, I saw what I was truly capable of. So if any of you have been in athletics of any kind, you'll probably remember some coach in your career that pushed you way beyond what you thought you were capable of. Well, sales is sort of an athletic deal as well, in a way, right? There's performance involved and there's effort and energy expelled, and you have to endure and stay focused. And so, if you feel like you or your team just hasn't been hitting their activity potential, I challenge you to put together an activity challenge day and, make it fun, make it a competition. Competition's amazing, but, don't just do it one day and walk away and say, well, I'm never doing that again. I think your experience, you'll have to try it yourself and maybe send us some feedback afterwards. But I think what you'll find is almost everybody on the team is capable of a lot more activity they think. And you'll learn a lot about your ability to multitask and your ability to adapt to all the other things you have going on to really crank up that activity level. And as a company where I was at, we saw almost a 40% increase in activity over the next month. And then the following month, once that pipeline had caught up, we saw more than a 40% increase in sales literally within 2 months. And some people got immediate results from that because they were out in the marketplace. They were planting more seeds than before. And everybody knows that the real game here is being, patient, but aggressive and planting a lot of seeds so that when you wake up 30 days from now or 60 days from now, you have a field of crop that can go be harvested and you've got a bunch of new clients. Now you have people you can get referrals from. So I don't want to beat this any longer than it needs to be beaten into the ground. But please, if you haven't done an activity challenge day, that's something you can do to correct this activity piece. If you're good on activity and you need to correct attitude, I would start by writing my goals down. I know Brett and I have spoken about this a lot. We both come from, owners in our past and current owners that encourage us to stay focused on our goals and remember why we walk in the office every day, right? Or if you're working from home, why we get out of bed, turn on the computer and push hard. And then on approach, that's training. And there's so many training solutions in the space right now that there's no reason why you can't go and, correct phone calls that aren't going perfect and get them back on track through role play, virtual training, consulting with a coach, or just sitting down with some of the more experienced people in your office and asking them for advice, right? And so if anybody wants any extra information on any of these three and how to kind of correct them, feel free to reach out, but hopefully that gives everyone a nice intro. Now, when it comes to hiring, this is an important piece in this equation because if you can't hire people effectively into your organization, then you can't get anyone to perform, right? How am I supposed to get somebody to perform in an empty desk that doesn't exist? And so I'm going to come back and revisit this at the end, but I do want to cover three important pieces on hiring. The first is that in 2021, if you right now are an agency owner or a manager on here who is looking to, hire and you've been struggling with it, these are the three things I'd be thinking with. Number one, I need to play to the metrics. What that means is I need to understand what I'm up against in the hiring market right now. Everybody sees it. We drive up the road, we see, hiring signs on literally every single business. I see it in Facebook groups. I see it on the road. Taco Bell's got a banner right now up the street from me. It says they have a $1,500 signing bonus at Taco Bell. Like everybody's trying to play the hiring game. But the challenge is you've got about 3 times as many companies actively hiring. You've got about half as many candidates applying to jobs. And so your job just became 6 times more difficult with hiring. So it's really important to understand that, hey, I'm going to probably have to put in 6 times the effort, whether that's ad spend, hours, whatever you measure your hiring efforts through. And in addition to that, you got to understand that there's only about a 1/3 show rate to interviews right now. So on this hiring piece, again, today's not about a pitch on Team Hired or hiring, but even if you're using your own hiring service and doing this internally, I would sit down and understand that we're not playing by the same rules that we were 6 months ago or a year ago. The second is that volume and speed are going to be your best friends. So the idea of getting maybe 2 or 3 people interested in the job and working on those 2 to 3 leads to find your new hire, probably not going to work out today. From what we've seen, you typically need 100 or several hundred applicants just from the beginning to show interest in your job. And you need to get to them fast and understanding that you might have 100 applicants for the job, but you might only like 30 of them. Of those 30, maybe only 10 show up for an interview. Of those 10, maybe you only get 3 job offers out, one of which accepts. So if you're playing too small of a game or you're moving too slow, where candidates are running to other companies faster than they're running to you, it's time to consider that maybe I need to amp up the volume of people I'm looking at. And maybe I need to speed up the process a little bit so that I don't lose candidates because they took a job elsewhere. And then the last is embrace candidates. Like I'd love to see from producers on this phone call, who loves their ownership? Like, please drop in here. My ownership's the best. My ownership's awesome. Like if you want to include why they're awesome, I'd love to see you guys drop into the comments because it's really, really, really important that as owners and as managers, you embrace your candidates. Don't just give them a job, right? If they're going to come and spend 8-9 hours a day, which is a tremendous amount of their wake hours with the office, we got to make sure that, it's a warm embrace, that we're not just there to say, hey, you got to do X, Y, and Z for me. And that's great, right? We've just been talking about that. Got to have expectations. But on the flip side, what can the ownership, what can the management do for the team, right? how are you going to let candidates know from the beginning that, hey, this is not a 9 to 5? We got career opportunities. We have a very fair compensation model that you're going to be well taken care of if you put in the work. We got a culture that we protect. We don't allow negativity inside of our office. Those are the things that candidates are looking for. I mean, you guys, producers on here, tell me if I'm crazy, but I know that's what Brett and I look for is, hey, I want a place where I feel protected by the ownership, where I've got some ongoing opportunity, where I feel like I'm being compensated fairly for the work that I put in. So I'm going to jump back into hiring at the tail end, but let's keep on moving here. So next piece of this equation that I spoke about at the beginning is retention. So these are the 3 pillars of retention that we swear by at Team Hired. Dave and Tom, our ownership, they've done a lot of hiring personally. They've done a lot of leadership personally, but we also have the opportunity to work with hundreds of agencies every month. And when people leave an agency, right, it typically boils down to one of these 3 things. Either A, they feel like the compensation is not fair. In other words, they can do the same exact work they're doing today, and they can make 25% more money down the road doing the same exact thing, same exact type of phone calls, same activity levels. And from what we found, and everyone's pretty smart, right? They're going to figure out after a certain amount of time, I can get compensated a lot more for doing the same thing. So this doesn't just apply to somebody who's just starting out trying to get their feet under them. This almost applies more so to somebody who's very competent, somebody who's gotten very good at producing. They're very consistent, and they sit down and say, "Hey, I wonder if I could be making more elsewhere." Well, you can just prevent them from leaving in the first place by doing some research, looking around in the local area, calling some friends, and finding out what is a fair compensation plan for my area. This is something that if you get in touch with us afterwards at Team Hired, we can go through a fine-tooth comb on your comp plan. We can give you market data for your specific market and what is a fair compensation plan. And we can talk about how to simplify them, how to make them easy to understand. But this compensation piece, definitely one of the leading reasons that people leave an agency and go elsewhere. And it's something that you have complete control over. The next one's culture. Okay. Probably don't need to spend a bunch of time on this, but we do spend more time at the office than we spend with our family, right? And so it's really important that culture is protected. And, a phrase that there's a guy by the name of JJ Giacontelli, and he came and spoke at a conference down in Miami in 2017. And he grew up a $1 billion auto group as COO of Rick Case Automotive. They're billion plus. I think they might even be like 3-4 billion. They're massive, right? And Rick Case Automotive Group goes by the principle of non-negotiables. And their definition of non-negotiables is, here's the things I will allow in my business. Here's the things I will not allow. I will not allow negativity, right? I will not allow people to badmouth our customers. I will not allow people to make excuses. I will not allow people to, fall short on the expectations we all have for each other on activity levels and showing up on time. And if anybody violates that, you just can't be here, right? You can be anywhere else. You just can't be here because it's not fair to the rest of us that somebody gets the golden hall pass that gets them out of that. And in the businesses I've been in, Team Hired is one of them, where the ownership has non-negotiables on their culture. Everybody who's here trusts each other. We work well together. It's a very, very positive culture. And look, if you're working from home, because we did a poll at the beginning that some of you are working from home, if you could pop in again, if you're working from home, just type home, right? Or remote. Like, you've got your own culture, which is more specifically what culture do you create for yourself? Do you roll out of bed in your pajamas and get to the desk and say, oh, another day, here we go? Or do you go outside and take a bike ride, take a walk, have a routine, do some reading, do some running, do some Xbox? I don't care, but what do you need to do to create your own culture and what you want that to look like? And I think it's amazing. If you work from home, you get to create a culture that could be better than Google's, right? We've all seen the videos of inside Google. They've got cafes and they've got lounge chairs that you can just sit back with a laptop. You're in control if you're working from home. And if you're at an office, you're in control of that as well, and that culture. So again, but if you're working remote, look, what is your culture? How do you leave your workday and enter into the family world with the kiddos and the wife and the husband, right? And how do you feel about your culture? If we came in and looked at your home office today, and we looked at your environment, and we looked at the conversations happening behind closed doors, and we looked at it just like it was a business, which it is, right? You're operating a business out of your home. Like, what is your culture as an individual? And then lastly is career path. So obviously, if somebody's talented, if they work hard, if they do all the right things, and they get to a point at any business and feel like, you know what, this is kind of the dead end for me, I got nowhere else to go. That's typically when people are going to leave and go elsewhere because they want more, right? They want to go to that next level of management or agency ownership or whatever. So I'm sure many of you offer career paths to your team members. I think the biggest struggle here is not that you don't offer it. The biggest struggle I've seen is it's not communicated clearly. So if it's been 90 days since you've spoken with each team member about where they could see themselves 3 to 5 years from now or a year from now, it's definitely time to sit down and rethink that and say, what can I offer my team in terms of a career path? And that's going to be good for you, right? Because that's where people get motivated. That's where they step up and take new ownership of more responsibility. And as an owner or a manager, the more you can empower your team members to take that next step in their career is, things that might fall off your plate that you can mentor them on, pull them into some of the things you're doing and free up your time to go work on other parts of the business. So compensation, culture, and career path. And then my cat is climbing on my lap. So if I had to add a fourth one, I'd say definitely get a cat. Yeah, it's Brett. Now it's the 4 pillars. All right. Compensation, culture, career path, and cat. And then
Dog or a cat person too.
All right. So I just want to do a quick recap here on this formula. I'm going to scroll all the way back up. In my mind, if you as an individual or your office can have clear expectations and clear consequences if those expectations aren't met, and have a strong foundation of accountability, and can take any low performance opportunity to review what is the attitude here? Are we taking the right level of activity? Do we maybe need to do some activity challenges to break out of what we think is possible? And are we taking the right approach? Do we have the right training in place? And then on top of that, being able to, really focus in and make sure that every team member has fair compensation, that you're protecting a strong culture that they live within every day, and that you're offering a long-term career path. I mean, that right there in a nutshell would be our kind of recommendation or equation for success. And so, I mean, many of you came to this phone call because you're thinking, I want to turn my performance around in 30 days, right? Or get to a new level of performance in 30 days. Well, hopefully there's a lot of practical steps inside of here for you all today that can help you kind of sit down and start to make sense of this, because there's a lot of moving pieces, right? As producers, as managers, as owners, sometimes we're just not hitting numbers and we don't know why. And every single one of these addresses you being able to sit down with an individual producer, or you as a producer to sit down and look at yourself and say, hey, how am I doing on these 3 A's, right? As a manager, how are we doing on these 3 C's to retain our team? And if it's hiring, like, are we playing the right game here to hire in 2021? And do we have strong accountability, which is our safety net? So hopefully that's of a lot of value. Now, what I'd like to see, and Brett, you tell me if I'm heading in the right direction here. Is there anybody that wants to see the hiring piece? I should probably dive into that real quick. Yes?
Absolutely. Let me chat it out here and make sure everyone wants the hiring piece as well. So just chat if you want Andy to go into the quick hiring piece. If you could just drop us a quick line. I see yes already.
Okay.
Type yes.
All right. Cool. So we'll do that.
And you're on for adopting another kitten, by the way. I just put it in the chat box. So yes.
Well, I'll dive into the hiring piece then here briefly, and just give everyone kind of an idea of what we do as a company. So if you're on this call today and you're like, hey, we can use some of that. We're good on performance, or we're going to continue to work on our performance, but I really need more team members. I need more salespeople. I need more service people on this team, right? And if you're a producer as well, I'm sure that you would like the help, right? If your ownership and management is looking to fill some slots, like a lot of times if we're understaffed as a producer, we end up doing a lot of things that aren't actually our job, but we do them because it's the right thing to do. And so, in whatever situation you're in, if you're looking to hire, going back to this, lot of scrolling here, make everyone dizzy, but when I go back to this keys to hiring, right? Playing to the metrics, volume of candidates, working fast, embracing candidates. These are the principles in 2021 that our entire process is built on top of. And so when you look at team hired from a process standpoint, it's pretty simple. When you come on board with Team Hired and say, hey, I need a salesperson. I need a service person, right? I need a new team member in this role. And you sign up with us. We actually go through a thorough onboarding right out of the gate. We cover an orientation on our process. We educate you on compensation plan structure. We go through onboarding best practices. We send over documentation afterwards that literally has a 90-day onboarding plan that's been proven to be successful, compensation plan templates. And then we also actually give you your own recruiter, your own account manager to help support you. So whether it's consulting that you need, or certainly them taking the lead on the hiring effort itself, it's the experience as if you went out today and said, hey, we're going to go hire a full-time recruiter in our office. They're our new recruiter, right, of the office. And their job is to help consult on recruiting. And their job is to go out and bring great candidates into the agency and run our hiring process. Well, when you do that, it's pretty expensive, very expensive, and it's difficult to find. And what we do is we give you that same experience without you having to go out and find somebody full-time that would be your in-house recruiter. And many of our clients come back and use us on a long-term basis. And a lot of times they can work with the same account manager month in, month out. So that's another unique part of our process is, hey, we're going to get you onboarded and educated, but we're also going to give you this account manager to personally consult and work with you very closely. And then what we do is we go out and we take everything off your plate that we all don't like to do in hiring. I've done a lot of hiring in my career. I know Brett has as well. Some of the things that were most frustrating for me was the time it took me to go run job ads and read through resumes and screen candidates and play phone tag with people and set up interviews. So we're doing all of that for you. In between steps 2 and step 3, we go out and we do all the candidate sourcing. We run all the job ads, and we might go out and get 100 applicants, and then we might weed out 70 of them that really don't look like they fit the mold for the role. What we're left with is maybe 30 people that say, hey, I'm interested in the position. We look at them and say, hey, you look pretty good from a distance. But here's where it's a little bit different. And this is how we speed things up, right? We talk about volume, but we also talked about speed. So how does Team Hired utilize speed? Well, Team Hired will take entire groups of candidates. We'll put them into a video-based group interview, and everybody shows up for about an hour, right, on camera. And we just run a group interview right in front of you. So as an owner, as a manager, we even got, Brett, then we have owners and managers that would bring in their entire sales team to watch the interviews as well to get their feedback. Yep. So whoever you want from the agency that's making hiring decisions, I know personally, I would have loved to sit in on interviews that our company had to see the individuals that were looking at the position, right? Because they're going to be working with me more than the owner. I'd love to see them. So anybody you want to pull in on that phone call, that's fine. And then we've got your Team Hired account manager right there with you. At this point, you've already met them. You already know them. They know a lot about you, your compensation plan, your book of business, and they run the whole interview for you. So this eliminates a tremendous amount of time. I mean, imagine trying to talk to 8, 10, 12 people on one-on-one interviews. Could take a week, could take 2 weeks. You start considering there's about a 65% no-show rate on interviews right now. And so this just cuts out a lot of that extra time. What you're able to do is drop in, sit in on about an hour panel interview, get enough information from each candidate to know who you want to proceed with. And then you just tell your account manager, hey, I like candidate A, I like candidate C, I like candidate F, I like candidate Z. And those are the ones I want to talk to. And we help send them to the office. They sit down with you all and, go through a final interview. And then at the end of all that, as an optional program, and we love it over here at Team Hired. Once you've made offers and made a hire, we have a 2-week pre-licensing course. So you can actually enroll a student in a 2-week pre-licensing course that includes all of the state certified pre-licensing material. We use ExamFX for that. And then an accountability coach that's working with them multiple times per day for 2 weeks straight. And Brett, the way I like to think about it, they're kind of like a tutor. Like they're there to answer questions about the material, but they're also there to help you study. They're there to help your new team members really navigate through there. Because I've been in ExamFX. I got my license in there. When I didn't have help from an external source, I was banging my head against the wall. I was getting lost. I was studying all the wrong material. I wasn't utilizing the practice quizzes like I should have. So, I'm assuming 99% of the people on this phone call have been through the licensing process. And you know how difficult it can be if you're just trying to navigate that on your own. So our program basically handles that 2-week cram course to prepare them to go take the state exam. So, that is a component of this, right? If we can't hire great people, we can't get them to perform because we don't have them in the first place. So if anybody wants to get a hold of us afterwards, teamhired.com, right on the recruiting page, we've got a form where you can just plug in first name, last name, email, phone number. Brett and I will both be reaching out to anybody and everybody. But speaking of the activity challenge, we have a different challenge for you today. So I'm going to pull up some pricing on our hiring. And then Brett, if you don't mind kind of breaking down our little competition we've created today.
Absolutely.
I'll pull this up for you and turn it over to you. Oh, Brett, I know you can't see it, but I got the price menu up.
Oh,
Sorry,
okay,
I know your
perfect.
screen.
Yeah, perfect. I appreciate that. And we've got some specialty pricing for everyone on this call. So just as a thank you for QuoteWizard putting this together, our standard pricing is normally a $2,500 upcharge, or I'm sorry, $2,500 pricing per hire. We have a specialty pricing for everyone on this call. You can do a one-time hire for our bronze package for $19.97. If you do more than one, so our 2-hire package, which is the silver, is $39.97, and it also includes 2 of those licensing boot camps that Andy was talking about. The gold package triples everything, triple the amount of marketing, triple the amount of hires, triple the amount of interviews that you're going to get, and you get 3 boot camps included in that offer. So some really, really good savings going on. And we want to thank, obviously, Kelsey and the QuoteWizard team for putting this together. Before we wrap things up, I definitely want to open this up for live Q&A. So I see some folks have been sending over these questions as we've been going through, and I've been trying to answer those. I've been having some technical difficulties. We've got a pretty nasty storm rolling through over here, so I do apologize for any sort of delay or typos. But before we get into that, does anyone have any questions on the pricing? Okay, wonderful. Let's open it up for some live Q&A. We're going to be sending out a pricing chart on this as well after the call. Now, the standard packages for the 2,000, 4,000, and 6,000 for the bronze, silver, and gold would be your non-licensed, the middle package. We do have other packages for ongoing. So you're going to see that we have the Always Be Hiring. That's a 6-month commitment. We also have a guaranteed PNC license candidate. That person is going to be basically a headhunting style position. So we can go out there, find somebody that has the license, the experience, guaranteed to have the PNC license as well. Typically a little bit longer recruitment time on this. You're looking probably about 90 days, and that one's $7,500. I'm going to turn it back over to Andy. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Just that if anybody is interested in the hiring piece of this, please, please go to teamhired.com and right on the recruiting page, feel free to plug your info in. Either Brett and I will be directly in touch with you, give you a phone call or shoot you an email over and set up a time to talk. And also I encourage you, even if you're not hiring and you just want to go through and review some of the material we went through on performance, I would fill out a form anyway, and we'll reach out and just let us know when we reach out. Hey, don't have a hiring need right now, but I'd like to go through some of the things that you all covered on performance. And we can, Brett, we'll gladly do a compensation plan review for anybody on here who may not be hiring at the present moment, but it's like, hey, look at my compensation plan, make sure it's fair for the market. Or if you want help on onboarding plans, we're happy to go through and do that for free and add value. We just want to be partners, in the industry. We want to be contributing, just like everybody on this phone call, right? We're out there to serve other people and to make sure that you're as successful as possible. So, if there's any questions from today's presentation on the performance piece, feel free to drop them down below. I think we might have a couple more minutes here to address those. But again, feel free to reach out separately as well on teamhired.com, and we'll be happy to help afterwards as well.
I see we've got a couple quick questions going through this here. Can you please go over the special pricing again? So we normally charge the $24.97 for the standard package. We can do that and include the boot camp for you. So you get the boot camp included. It's basically a $500 discount. If you do more than one, we're going to offer a $1,000 discount on the actual pricing. So it brings it down to $39.97. And it's going to include 2 boot camps. We can also triple that for 6,000. So that first package you see up there, you're getting that boot camp included for free. And if you do anything over one hire, we are going to give you a $500 discount on top of that, and then still include the boot camps.
And I see a question from Cecilia here about the activity challenge, and I definitely see that if no, if you haven't read that, the concern was really around, hey, the competition could lead to people just pounding through phone calls as quickly as they can, just to win the competition. So on that, what I would do is just create a real basic point system that says if you quote business or if you close a policy, it's worth 50 phone calls. Right. So like you're going to weight the actual outcome you're looking for is quoted business and closed policies. So I would weight it in the competition. And, that's actually a pretty regular pyramid of expectations that's floating out there. I know like Craig Wiggins, CWC has something on their website or through their program that I've seen that basically says, hey, this is a pyramid, right? You're expected to write, let's just say 2 policies per day. If you don't do that, you're required to quote at least 6 policies. And again, I'm making up these numbers, so don't hold me to it. And if you don't hit that metric, you're expected to make 80 phone calls. So, if you get your policies out, you're good. If you're not getting the policies, we need the quotes. And if you're not getting the quotes, we got to make the phone calls. So we would set up the competition a similar way if you've got that concern. And also, I mean, part of that's going to be communication, Cecilia, about, hey guys, no fake phone calls today. This is not about you, blowing through opportunities. And on the flip side, if I find out that you're rushing a customer through the phone call and not working that lead fully, I'm immediately going to pull you out of the competition. You're probably going to get a write-up. So let's not do that. This is supposed to be a fun competition today. But in addition to that, just to make it more exciting, if you quote a lead, you get an extra 10 phone call bonus just added on to your overall activity. And if you write a policy on the spot from today's activity, then we're going to give you an extra 50 phone call credit to your overall daily activity. So I would do something like that. And I think that would help mitigate it. Yeah. So I hope that helps.
A couple other questions too. I see we've got some questions coming in as far as, contact rates and also the automated follow-up process. So just to kind of speak to the activity challenge that you were talking about, we had somebody kind of ask, what is the normal, contact rate? They feel like they're reaching out. And I will tell everyone, you got to have the processes in place. We do also have solutions for automating the follow-up sales process. So I don't know if anyone on here has ever heard of Ricochet 360. We also had that up as well too. That is a CRM lead manager phone system. The platform is completely automated. It's ready to go out of the box for insurance agents, and it automates the follow-up process by setting up follow-up phone calls, sending out text message automation and email automation simultaneously. So you can call those high priority quote leads or Quote Wizard leads faster, and you can maintain consistent follow-up. If anybody's interested in taking a look at the Ricochet system as well too, drop myself or Andy a line and we can get you a link over to the demo on that as well. I see that we have some questions on pricing. So if you could just put the pricing up on screen once again. We're going to be sending out the specialty pricing to everyone that's on this call. We'll get this over to Kelsey and we can forward it to the rest of the team here as well. And then we have another question coming in. So it looks like, okay, so part of the process for Cliff, you call them immediately and then you email each person every day for a week. And that's pretty aggressive. I like that. What if I told you that if you called that person, I could show you a system that would allow you to click one button. It would set up 18 follow-up phone calls. It would send out a plethora of customized text messages, a series of follow-up emails, and you'd never have to follow up on that lead again until they responded. Is that something that would add value? And if so, just drop me a quick line. I can get you the link to that demonstration as well too. So I think that's all of the questions that we've got here. Anyone else? Yeah, we've got some folks that are chatting and they want to see the demo on Ricochet as well.
Hey, Brett.
Yes.
For anybody who's wondering about the follow-up piece as well, and maybe you're wondering like, what's the verbiage that we should be using in an email or text, or we're just not getting the penetration that we need, but we're doing the follow-up. I'd also recommend reach out to us because we've got a ton of resources. We've done multiple national presentations on the follow-up piece. So Yeah, if you guys are wanting more help after this, obviously we can't tackle every every topic under the sun in one webinar. But if we don't have the answers for you, we can get you connected with somebody that does. And then on the Ricochet piece as well, obviously Brett would be happy to run you through that. So if there's any hanging questions you don't have answered, just please, reach out, fill out a form, and we'll reach out and just tell us what you need, and we can answer stuff afterwards as well. I don't want anyone to feel like this chat closes up, we end today's call, and then you never get an answer to your question. So if you have anything else, reach out afterwards. We're happy to help.
And I can definitely include any links to a Ricochet 360 demo into the follow-up email as well. That'll include this recording, so you guys have that.
Terrific. Yes, we'll get that link over to you. And then anybody that's interested, jump on the calendar. We do live demos of Ricochet Monday through Friday, a couple times a day. So regardless of what time zone you're in, we probably got a convenient time. And if not, we'll make time for you. So want to thank you, Kelsey, for putting this together, and special thanks to everyone on the call here.
Of course. Thank you guys so much for being here. I learned a lot. I'm sure our agents learned a lot. And hopefully we will have you guys on again soon.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Kelsey. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.